Welcome to this week's Read This Next with Shauna.
Hi.
And Nicole. This week we are talking about something a little different from fiction. It's Massey Lectures. For those that don't know, Shauna, do you want to give us a little bit of a lowdown of what the Massey Lectures are?
They are an annual lecture that's presented here in Thunder Bay in Canada. They've been going on since the 60s. I think pretty much every year. There was one year where there wasn't one. And they ask I'm going to say thought leader to present on a topic of interest to the country. So there have been all kinds of very well-known people. Margaret Atwood did one, Noam Chomsky,
And they're presented by CBC, so most of these, all of them are available on CBC's website if you want to listen to the audio version. And you were saying that we have some in the actual collection and some like the written version of them, and some are actually in Cloud Library. All the ones that we've listed here are available in both
one
those
or the
places.
other. Yeah, one or the other. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they're pretty cool, and they're not all the same topic. So if you hear one that you like and it sticks out to you, go check it out, because we're going to talk about a whole bunch of them, and they're all very different. So
well, and one of the reasons I thought this was a great topic to be discussing right now is the 2020 Massey Lecture is coming up in November. So
and you said they released who it was going to be, right? Like not who it was going to be, but what their job was.
It's this year renowned tech expert Ronald J. Dibert. He's going to be looking at social media. His talk is called Reset, Reclaiming the Internet for Civil Society.
Interesting.
And it should be very interesting. This year's going to be different because, of course, COVID. So they're not going to be presenting it at a city. It's all going to be online. Normally they would do each lecture, there's 5 lectures, and one would be at one city, and then they kind of move around and do different cities. So
I think the one that I was listening to, there was one in McGill. I think they were performing it they were doing it at McGill University, and then the next one I think was in somewhere in Manitoba, but I can't remember. But they're all over the country. So in the future, if anyone gets an opportunity, that'd be pretty cool to see. So our first highlight is, of course, the well-known Tanya Talaga. And she, for those of you that don't know, she wrote The Seven Fallen Feathers. We've mentioned it in previous episodes. Her Massey lecture is called All Our Relations, Finding the Path Forward. And I'll just read the brief description. Did you read this one, Shauna?
I did.
I'll read the brief description, that you can tell me what you thought about it. Okay. In this vital and incisive work, best-selling and award-winning author Tanya Talaga explores the alarming rise of youth suicide in Indigenous communities in Canada and beyond. From Northern Ontario to Nunavut, Norway, Brazil, Australia, and the United States, the Indigenous experience in colonized nations is startlingly similar and deeply disturbing. It's an experience marked by the violent separation of peoples from the land, the separation of families, and the separation of individuals from traditional ways of life, all of which has culminated in a spiritual separation that has had an enduring impact on generations of Indigenous children. As a result of this colonial legacy, too many communities today lack access to the basic determinants of health, leading to mental health and youth suicide crisis on a global scale. But Talaga reminds us First People are also share a history of resistance, resilience, and civil rights activism, from the occupation of Alcatraz, led by the Indians of all tribes, to the Northern Ontario Sterling Quiet Lake Riot. And then she also talks about the more current stuff like Dakota Access Pipeline. So it sounds interesting. Like I really like the idea of hearing her. I think I would like hearing these more than reading them personally. But
this one's a very interesting one because first of all, she presented the first lecture here in Thunder Bay that was
That's
part
cool.
of her, she agreed to do a lecture only if she could present here in Thunder Bay. So I saw that lecture here at the auditorium.
Oh,
And
cool.
then I went and read the book more recently. So it was very interesting to see the difference between the two. You didn't go and see that one, did you? When it was, no.
I don't think no, definitely
No.
not. I was like, I don't think I've seen any of these. And then I was like, no,
Yeah.
I would remember.
That's the only one that I saw. And it was really cool to be there. I heard about it so last minute, and the auditorium was packed. Like Thunder Bay is so notorious for, like, you hear things word of mouth. I don't know how everyone heard about this, but like everyone went. It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's neat. I just, especially like you said, it's really interesting watching how things spread in Thunder Bay, because some things become so huge and other ones you're just like, wah, wah.
Yeah. And you hear about it like 3 days after it happens, like, oh, I would have gone.
Yeah, I wonder if they promoted it, if people heard about it on the CBC channel, if that's maybe where they.
Or it's also possible just because it was very topical after Seven Fallen Feathers, that like it was just more likely that people knew who she was and like picked up on it. So
Yeah, that could be too.
Yeah.
You're
So
next.
this next one, this is Payback by Margaret Atwood, which hilariously
You happen to have on hand.
I literally just finished it last night. So here's the description. This is from Goodreads, right?
I think so.
Legendary novelist, poet, and essayist Margaret Atwood delivers a surprising look at the topic of debt. In her wide-ranging, entertaining, and imaginative approach to the subject, Atwood proposes that debt is like air, something we take for granted until things go wrong. And then, while gasping for breath, we become very interested in it. Payback is not about practical debt management or high finance. Rather, it's an investigation into the idea of debt as an ancient and central motif in religion, literature, and the structure of human societies. Margaret Atwood writes, "These are not lectures about how to get out of debt. Rather, they're about the debtor-creditor twinship in the broadest sense, from human sacrifice to pawnshops to revenge. In this light, what we owe and how we pay is a feature of all human societies and profoundly shapes our shared values and our cultures."
That sounds cool too. I just like all the ideas of these lectures because they're all just so different that I'm like, I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So I was really excited when I was like, okay, Margaret Atwood talking about debt, like where's this gonna go? So
not a topic you would think she would be speaking about.
And she even starts it off saying, like, I was just interested in this, so here we go. And it's like, wow, I think of it as like, a lot of these people, this is their life work, so they're lecturing about it. She was just like, I'm interested. Let's see where this takes us.
That's so real. They're just like, yeah, that's exactly what we do too. Yeah. She's just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
Doing insane research into debt.
But it's a pretty fun one. Like I don't know, I just read it, so I don't know what the lecture itself would have been like delivered orally, but she's got a really conversational kind of tone, which I was liking. And again, it's like she's not being like, I'm an expert, here's everything. It's like, let's see what we find. So that was pretty cool.
That's cool. A little more open.
Yeah.
It
did take a bit of a crazy turn in the last well, there are five chapters to correspond to each lecture, right? So the last lecture or chapter, it took some crazy turns.
Yeah.
Coming, but I was like, okay, that's fun. Kind of tied back to another lecture that I'm going to highlight. It's my personal recommendation, but yeah, the short history of progress, like just how progress isn't necessarily good. So I don't want to get too much ahead of myself here, but like it did actually tie back to that lecture quite a bit.
That's neat.
Yeah.
So, the next one is the Lost Massey Lectures, which is by John Kenneth Galbraith, Paul Goodman, Jane Jacobs, Eric W. Kiernan, and Martin Luther King Jr. So this is, I'll read the description. CBC Massey Lectures, an annual broadcasting fixture for more than 45 years in Canada's preeminent public lecture series. So this is a collection of major thinkers offering passionate polemics on the major issues of the 20th century. Here is King on race and prejudice, Galbraith on economics and poverty, Jacobs on Canadian cities and Quebec separatism, Goodman on the moral ambiguity of America, Brandt on international peace, Kiernan's on globalism and the nation state, and much more. Their words not only have considerable historical significance, but also remain hugely relevant to the problems we face today. At last, a selection of these lost lectures is available for a world so hungry for, and yet in such short supply of, innovation ideas. So, to me, which I haven't read this one, it sounds like it's a bunch that maybe they don't have recordings of, and they only have the written copy.
I'm not entirely sure, like, it might also be the other way around, that this is the first time they've been published since they were originally published, like they were collected, but these are some of the early ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that they're necessarily available in the cute little white version like they all are. So yeah, this book, I haven't read it. It's available on Cloud Library, but I love the idea that like you can access these older lectures as well, like in the written form. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's it's neat that they still have record of them and then they want to make them well known again, and it
available
must be longer
again.
Do you think that it's probably longer than the normal white one, right? Or did lectures used to be shorter?
I don't know, because if there's still the 5 lecture thing, like I assume it would be quite long. Like,
so I just looked it up. The lost Massey Lectures, they are 5 chapters each, but the book looks like it's about 416 words, so it's a bit thicker, but it's probably not. I mean, it's like reading a James Patterson. I think there's like 7 pages in each chapter.
Okay, so like a little bit denser text then, like
yeah. Okay. It didn't look too bad though, so
yeah. But no, I think it's really awesome that they made those available again, because the next one here is Power Shift: The Longest Revolution by Sally Armstrong. This is actually last year's lecture.
Okay.
The facts are indisputable. When women get even a bit of education, the whole of society improves. When they get a bit of health care, everyone lives longer. In many ways, it has never been a better time to be a woman. A fundamental shift has been occurring. Yet from Toronto to Timbuktu, the promise of equality still eludes half the world's population. In her 2019 CBC Massey Lectures, award-winning author, journalist, and human rights activist Sally Armstrong illustrates how the status of the female half of humanity is crucial to our collective surviving and thriving. Drawing on anthropology, social science, literature, politics, and economics, she examines the many beginnings of the role of women in society and the evolutionary reasons over millennia in the realms of sex, religion, custom, culture, politics, and economics. What ultimately comes to light is that gender inequality comes at too high a cost to us all. So,
I'm fascinated by like women and gender studies. So this is like right up my alley, and it sounds really fascinating because it focuses on why it impacts everybody, not just ladies, which I like hearing how, because a lot of time things tend to focus on why it would be better for women for feminism, essentially. But this sounds really neat because it's actually saying, well, actually, it's going to help everybody.
Well, that also makes me think of another one. I haven't read this one, but I did read Race Against Time by Stephen Lewis, who was talking specifically about Africa and the AIDS epidemic, which unfortunately that one, it's a little bit dated now, because it was looking at the UNICEF, what they were called, Millennium Goals, I think. And they were supposed to be met by 2015, and like here we are, 2020, like it's a little past that deadline. But he talked a lot about women being integral to the health of those societies as well. So like, I feel like a lot of these are kind of in conversation with each other.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times, well, like everything in society is connected, right? So it makes sense that these big thinkers are all kind of all interconnected.
Yeah.
I also really like the cover on that one. Have you seen
Yeah.
those images of what different places look like without men? Like
No.
the House of Parliament without men in it. There's like 4 women
Oh,
sitting there.
really?
Yeah.
I believe it, but like, wow, like, to actually see that and like, wow, yeah.
I can't remember who the artist or the photographer. I think it's probably a digital artist. Someone did Photoshop, obviously,
Well,
to
I was gonna
like.
say they Photoshop them out or just
Mhm.
put the women in. So
But what a statement, eh? I think one of
yeah.
them was like a meeting with Hillary. Hillary Clinton was in a meeting, and it was all men around her, and it shows like the the first image shows there's like 10, 15, maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but 10, 15 men in the room, and then the next image is literally just her sitting there, and you're like,
Oh,
it just
yeah.
says a lot, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But that's what this cover kind of reminds me of, because all the men are, I'll show it.
Yeah.
They're all in black and white, and all the women are in color, so it kind
Mhm.
of highlights.
And there are only like what 4 compared to about
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna guess 15 men.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, interesting. It reminds me a lot of
very,
that.
very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next one is the cult of efficiency, and this
Mhm.
one sounded really cool to me, and I might have to read it in my spare time, because I was just like, oh, because I'll read the thing and then I'll tell you about my piece about
Okay.
productivity and the situation we're in globally right now.
Yeah.
Okay, The Cult of Efficiency by Janice Gross-Stein. We live in an age dominated by the cult of efficiency. Efficiency in the raging debate about public goods is often used as a code word to advance political agendas. When it's used correctly, efficiency is important. It must always be part of the conversation when resources are scarce and citizens and governments have important choices to make among competing priorities. Even when the language of efficiency is used carefully, that language alone is not enough. Unilingualism will not do. We need to go beyond the cult of efficiency to talk about accountability. Much of the democratic debate of the next decade will turn on how accountability becomes part of our public conversation and whether it is imposed or negotiated. She draws on public education, universal health care, locally and globally, as flashpoints in the debate about their efficiency. She argues that we will define the quality of education from Ontario to India and the quality of healthcare from China to Alberta. That what will define, sorry, not.
No.
Yeah, from China to Alberta is whether citizens and governments can negotiate new standards of accountability. The cult of efficiency will not take us far enough. That sounds really cool to me, because I think a lot of times we put so much emphasis on productivity and getting things done faster that the quality is lost.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say about the world right now is when we were at home for a long time, a lot of people were like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you're one of those people, which good for you. I'm tired. And there's nothing wrong with this, but there was this big push for people to be like, take up a new hobby, fix your backyard, instead of like we had to use this time to do something when we could be doing nothing. Like there was an expectation that everybody be doing something still. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because like personally, I did do a couple big projects that I've been wanting to do for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I find it very interesting because like I did a bunch of projects, but there were a few points where I didn't do any. And I actually, like, in the middle of the pandemic and the lockdown, I felt worse sitting there not having something to do than when I was actually working towards just something, anything. But so like I did both, I tried to do nothing for a little bit, and then I did stuff, and like I personally felt better actually doing something.
Yeah. No, and I to each their own, obviously. Like I go home and I like do nothing, which is who I am. But I know after a while, it was like the more I sat there, the more I was turning into the couch. And it was good to it was good to have like some things to do. But I think what for me was bugging me was that like this belief that you had to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Like doing something cool, great, love that you're doing something, but I felt like a lot of people were like being putting pressure on, like, you should be using this time, like this is valuable time, you could be doing things. It's like, yes, but also there is time for relaxation, so you shouldn't have to do something.
And it's like, it's time to take a breath and like just relax and chill for a little bit.
Yeah, and it was something very stressful too, so like the expecting everybody to go is a lot. So yeah,
it actually reminds me of this picture I found. I can't remember where, but it was showing like a pile of mammals. It was like a human and maybe like an elephant and something else, and it was like, it's okay to be lazy, we're a mammal. It's like, we're lazy, it's fine.
We're meant to relax every once in a while. Yeah, I tried building a dollhouse.
Oh yeah.
When I was home, and I got all the like hard fiddly parts done, and then when it came time to like put the big thing together, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I just gave up. But that's, like I said, me and projects depends on the project. The dollhouse didn't get finished.
That's fair.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. I think that's all for our highlights.
Yep.
Do we want to move into our personal rec?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, as I already kind of spoiled, my personal rec is A Short History of Progress by Ronald Wright. This book, my brother recommended to me a few years ago. It is so good. Like, if you like, everybody should read it. I personally think everyone should read it. It was the 2004 Massey Lecture, or 2003 Massey Lecture? No, 2004.
2003 was
2004.
king.
Yeah. And it is probably even more so relevant now than it was back then, which is crazy. So I'm going to just read the Goodreads thing. Each time history repeats itself, the cost goes up. The 20th century, a time of unprecedented progress, has produced a tremendous strain on the very elements that comprise life itself. This raises the key question of the 21st century. How much longer can this go on? With wit and erudition, Ronald Wright lays out a convincing case that history has always provided an answer, whether we care to notice or not. From Neanderthal men to the Sumerians to the Roman Empire, A Short History of Progress dissects the cyclical nature of humanity's development and demise, the 10,000-year-old experiment that we've unleashed but have yet to control. It is Wright's contention that only by understanding and ultimately breaking from the patterns of progress and disaster that humanity has repeated around the world since the Stone Age can we avoid the onset of a new dark age. Wright illustrates how various cultures throughout history have literally manufactured their own end by producing an overabundance of innovation and stripping bare the very elements that allowed them to initially advance. Wright's book is brilliant, a fascinating rumination on the hubris at the heart of human development and the pitfalls we still have many times to avoid, or still may have time to avoid. Sorry.
Wow, that is very relevant.
It's very relevant and very, very good. It was like, it's crazy. Like, he uses many different examples through society where, say, like the buffalo is just an easy example where humans got so good at hunting buffalo that they hunted them so badly that it's like it collapsed our culture at that time. Mm-hmm. And this isn't just a one-off case. This has happened over and over and over again. But in the past, people could just move. So it's like, you know, you used up the buffalo here, using that example again, let's just go over there, it's fine. But we have nowhere else to go now, is what his big thing is. It's like, we need to stop and like actually do something different, or we're going to collapse the world around us, including ourselves. So
no kidding. That's I'll look this up to double check that I'm not just spewing nonsense, but I'm pretty sure with the Easter Island, I don't remember what the actual name of the island is, but the like Easter Island is completely barren of everything but those heads or bodies.
Yes.
I think
that's actually one of the things he brings up.
Okay, so I'm not just spewing
you're
nonsense.
You're not
okay.
spewing nonsense. That's totally in there.
Right? And that's so interesting.
Yeah, he said that they ended up basically killing themselves over just trying to erect the best idol, basically.
That's wild. So for people who haven't read it yet, it's that the theory is, or I guess they found a bit of proof about this, is that there were people who lived on the Easter Island, and they were building these bodies and heads of, what were the heads for? Were they spiritual in some way?
I can't remember offhand. It's been a few years since I read A Short History of Progress. I actually want to reread it soon, but I don't know. Let's go Google time.
Okay, and while you're saying that, they were trying their very hardest to like essentially beat each other and like making the best one, and so they completely got rid of all the trees that they needed to move the heads, to carve the heads, and like all this stuff, so they had nothing to survive off of. And then the more that they built, the more that they took down, and then the more that they took down, the less they had to eat. And like, essentially just the perfect microcosm to explain why you shouldn't use all your resources up.
Oh, each statue represented the deceased head of a lineage.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So it's almost like a grave marker, I guess.
Yeah.
So again, I totally recommend this book. Like if you read nothing else from the Massey Lectures, like I 100% recommend this book for, especially again, like right now, this is a message that humanity as a whole needs to hear.
So. And we'll never listen.
Oh, probably not. No, but it's like, more people actually do pay attention. Maybe we can turn some of this around.
Yeah, it's that age old, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. Yeah, so check these out. Like we said, CBC Massey Lectures. You can either just look up Massey Lectures in Cloud Library, and I think if you go to the CBC, they'll have the list of all of them, and search for individual titles in Sierra, or on the library catalog, we call it Sierra. Search for the actual title of the lecture, and you're more likely to find it than just typing Massey Lecture. But
Cloud Library, though, you could, I searched Massey Lecture and more came up that way, but not so much our catalog. So, and again, the 2021 is coming out November, so keep an ear out for that.
And I'll try and put a link to the actual lectures in blog notes.
Sounds good.
So thank you again for filling in on this episode.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. So I'm going to do our wrap-up speech. We thank you for watching Read This Next. We are here every Friday. We are now at TBayPL across all platforms, including YouTube, so you can find us there. So that's at TBayPL. Like, comment, subscribe. We want to hear from you guys, what you guys think, what topics you want to hear. And we will see you guys all next week. Bye!